After Illinois' win over Purdue at the State Farm Center, you can watch a recap of that game up on the channel now. Cart and I covered it for about 45 minutes long this morning. After this game, Matt Painter, who is one of the best quotes in college basketball, we know this, was asked about this very topsy-turvy Illinois team. And if you really think about it, this game was a good microcosm for Illinois' full season. There were highs, there were lows, and ultimately the talent was on full display. We know this team has a really high ceiling, but when they don't play to it consistently, it can be hard to know what to make of them. So Jeremy Werner asked Matt Painter about this. Shout out to at jwerner 24/7. And this is what Matt Painter said about this Illinois team as the postseason begins. He said, quote, "They're one of those teams that can just blitz people in the NCAA tournament. But if they get in one of those ruts, dot, 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 it's going to be how the wind blows for them, but they can beat anybody in the country." Payne has a very concise way of making something that I take months to say seem very easy to just say it. But do you agree with his assessment of what this Illinois team will be in March?
I mean, pretty much. Yeah, I think he pretty much explained it very concisely. I mean, there's a few teams from the Big Ten where it's like they can beat anyone in the country, and then there's a but at the end, and Illinois is definitely one of them. I mean, Illinois is so talented. Like the top of their roster, I think, can go head to head with any roster in the country. Um, it's a really special team. So I definitely agree with what he's saying. What I like about Paint though is the way he explains stuff. But on top of that, his teams never really have that but in terms of like they can beat anybody in the country. But I mean, I used to say they can beat anybody in the country, but Zach Edey can't guard or pick and roll. I was also just wrong about that though. So I was just like dead wrong about it. I mean, there's kind of like they could be anybody in the country, but they only have three players. You could say that this year, but that's more of a roster construction thing than a mentality with this team. So what I like about Payton is the way he describes stuff. It's very transparent. Um, and at the same time, he kind of removes that from his own teams. Like, do you think you could remove the butt that he had if he was coaching Illinois?
Basically just like take out, but if they get in one of those ruts, dot, dot,
Yeah,
dot, and it's just they could beat anybody. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
applies. I think that applies. Whether he was coaching Illinois or even just coaching this Purdue team. I think
yeah.
Cart and I ended the recap kind of being like, hey, do you want to buy back into either of these teams for March? And both of us had this sort of same gut reaction of like, not really. Like not to say they can't make a run. I think both these teams are Final Four capable, but it's going to be really draw dependent. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to hear Payne talk about Illinois because they're very volatile, right? Nobody is questioning the ceiling. We saw their ceiling when they played Oregon. They scored 109 points, won a game by 32 points on the road against the 31st best team in the country. If you do that on a neutral floor against anybody, yeah, you're going to either win the game or be right in the game against the Dukes of the world. But the issue for me is I feel like when Illinois gets talked about in this way, like, oh, what could they do? It usually just gets framed in the best case scenario. That's how like
Mhm.
the Rothsteins of the world tweet about it. It's like, well, if they just make shots, if they just play to their best, they're going to be dangerous. The other thing is, it's equally as likely that if they play to their worst, they will lose in the first round to anyone in the tournament. And I think Painter, just again, more poignantly than anybody else has said it, lays that out really nice. It's going to be the wind. It's going to be how the wind blows. Is it out of Illinois' control, even which version of Illinois shows up? Kind of, because the way they play basketball is a way that is dependent on shot making, and they are just not a consistent shot making team. Now, recently in the last 2 weeks, they've started doing some things that you can depend on more. Like they've really doubled down on crashing the offensive boards and making a living off of that. Since they went away from Perez, I feel like this team has a little bit of a new identity. Will Riley is more consistent. So, maybe they're taking steps to take control back in terms of what happens. But I thought it was really wise of Pate to lay it out of like it's going to be kind of random for this Illinois team. If the dice roll the right way, they can beat anybody. If they don't, they can lose to anybody.
I feel like, and obviously Paint wasn't trying to explain it this way, but maybe this is just kind of like my vantage point with it. Um, yeah, if the dice roll the wrong way, obviously they can come out and miss a bunch of shots. I think a coach like Paint can coach with that in a different way than Brad Underwood can, though. We've kind of spoken about it a lot where Brad Underwood kind of goes in with the one game plan and then kind of struggles with adjustments. Like, I think there's certain coaches that if you gave them this Illinois team, if those shots started missing, they can come up with something else that they can do to kind of stick in the game. And in my opinion, that's like I really, really want to buy Illinois stock in the tournament because let's say they come out firing away, like their first two games, they can make the Sweet 16 winning both games by double digits, right? Like that's how good this team is. And then in the Sweet 16, if they come out cold, they could also get smoked by 20. And I don't really feel like they have a plan B. And I think you need a plan B, a plan C, a plan D in March, just because I mean, you say it best, like March is random. And if you don't have that ability to switch up, it can make it really rough.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a sign of hope for Illinois is that Brad did make good adjustments late in the Purdue game because he started doubling TKR just in the final 4 minutes, and Purdue didn't know what to do with it. So,
Yeah.
but you're right. Historically, that hasn't necessarily been a strength. What do you think? What would Brad Underwood's quote be about Purdue if he was asked the same question?
Um, they can be anybody in the country, but they don't like to use the transfer portal.
Yeah,
But they don't
they
believe in high level recruits.
they can beat anybody in the country, but when you get to Lithuania, it's going to be tough.
They don't want to play my team in Slovenia.